quake with fear at the approach of combat? Hoping to talk your way out of a fight like a human? Or do you hear the cry of the warrior, calling you to battle, calling to glory like a Klingon?
All right, guys, welcome back. This, of course, is the Admiral with the Klingon. And, you know, we do our breakdown of the TNG episodes. What's going on, Taco Cat? So I'm sporting the Federation shirt today, the official Federation officer shirt. Got on the United cap. I thought I would change it up and actually get into the spirit of what we have been doing. Last couple of days, I've been pushing Star Trek at a certain toy store that we all know. And I'm ready to get into this episode. I've been kind of looking forward to it. Yesterday, I'm sorry, I had a wee bout of something. And today I was like, hey, hopefully, fingers crossed, everybody's with us. And of course, the Admiral was like, yeah, let's do it. Captain Bishop has been restricted to dry dock. We'll get to that later. I told you, we give that man a little bit, he won't take a mile. You know what I mean? So our next two episodes that we're going to talk about, guys. This one is a bittersweet episode for me. Skin of Evil. Now, unfortunately, apparently Rick Berman and Miss Denise Crosby had a little incident thing where she was trying to do a little bit more. She needed some time to go do some to explore a movie career, and I guess that kind of upset Mr. Berman to the point where he wanted to kill off her character, but she got to come back. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about this. I actually got to meet Miss Crosby. I saw her once at a convention. How can I say this? She autographed some clothing. Miss Liz was there as well back in the day. And I did not realize that, of course, was Miss Liz. We had not known each other. And she and I had been to some of the same conventions. And anyway, Ms. Crosby had signed off some personal belongings, some unmentionables of hers for an auction for some fans. But this was the thing before this episode, because, you know, she was on there and Star Trek was flying kind of high. But they announced it in TV Guide that she was going to die. And I thought that was so wrong. You know what I mean? Because we would have been, you know, that would have shattered us to see a major crew member. What did... Admiral, do you see this?
Yeah. What did you get?
Well, Marky Mark, just to be transparent, she signed her panty. As a young man at a convention, most of my money was spent 10 minutes after getting to the convention. 88. So I was still young. I was April. So I was 17. So again, and I was new to that whole con circuit thing back then, but I got to see her. I believe Michael Dorn was there, and it was down at the beach at the Cavalier. And yeah, she signed her panties. And there's just no way in the world. You know what I mean? Like I said, by the time that auction thing went on, I was already, I had just enough money to get me a couple cheeseburgers or something by that time. You know what I mean? It was a Star Trek convention. I was heavily into Star Trek. We were then part of Starfleet International, and we were the Marine Corps aboard the ship, the USS Ma'at, which at first I thought was the most silliest thing that I could ever think. Who names their ship that? Without doing research, it's an Egyptian goddess of justice, and it never dawned on me until, I don't know, maybe maybe a year ago, when I started writing and I started doing Egyptian stuff. So they kill this character off, and we all know she's going to die. So it's not like it's a surprise. It's not like it's, oh my God, and not like, of course, Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
Where, Spock is dead. My dad's like, they can't kill Spock. No, Dad, he's dead. You know what I mean? He's gone.
I cried.
Oh, you. Let me tell you, seeing Kirk slumped over.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have it right here. See that little Funko Pop thingy right there? That's Kirk and Spock in the chamber, and then of course there's my Enterprise. So I too, that's another reason why Star Trek 2 is one of my favorite Star Treks of all time. That whole thing, and Kirk's speech, I've never faced death like this, and my dad was like, Kirk's faced death all this. I said, no, not like this. He lost a part of him when his friend died. His friend was like a brother to him. So I got it. I don't think my dad necessarily understood it, but it was heartbreaking. So when this happened, I'm like, well, we already knew she was going to die, so I wasn't really, heartbroken about it. They go down to retrieve a shuttle, and they find this black ooze down there that's doing this thing. Give me your impressions on this episode.
Well, the first thing I did notice within the first few minutes, you had the engineer at one point, and that's within the first few minutes of the episode, where I guess there was something going on with the engine room, and Picard's like, hey, go to warp 8. And engineer Lynch was like, oh, well, we can't do that, and blah, 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 blah. And what I really liked about it, and we talked about it with the newer Strange New Worlds with Pike, Picard immediately said, didn't I tell you to go to 8? Shot the engineer down quick, and when I rewatched this episode the other day, and when he did that, I'm like, oh, Picard was, was no joke. I said do this. I mean, what the heck? How dare you? I told you to do that. So I was actually really impressed how fast he said it. Couldn't believe the engineer opened up his mouth like that, because this is not the first episode that we see him in. And, watching, recognizing his face, obviously he wasn't in the show long. I don't know when he go out. I need to look that up. But very impressed how Picard quickly shot him down, and I can't even believe he had the nerve to say that. I mean, this is Picard, even before Picard was Picard, like, how I feel later on the seasons. For this guy just to be like, well, Picard, I don't care. So I kind of like that point. Looking at the black goo guy light form, we're still season 1, episode 23. It was, April of 88. And the special effects, you know.
What are you trying
So
to say?
so I thought that, I mean, it was the 80s, late 80s, so I kind of could bypass that. But seeing Tasha dies within like the first 10 minutes of the episode, it was quick, and I don't quite remember. I know you said they mentioned it in the TV guide. I don't remember that aspect of them saying that she was going to die, but just rewatching it now, kind of sad that she wasn't happy with her character um, on Next Gen, that she wanted to do movies. And I actually think the movie she did was a movie with John Ritter, if I recall. I cannot remember the name of the movie. Skin Deep or
Was that
something.
after? Was that after or before Pet Cemetery?
I just watched Pet Cemetery, and I want to say Pet Cemetery. Was that like 80?
No, Miracle Mile.
No, it wasn't. It was like
I didn't
Skin
know she
Deep.
was in Deep Impact.
Yeah, yeah. She was the girl that the Elijah Wood. She was her mother. She died on the interstate with her husband. I think last time we see her was her husband and her and the two daughters were in the car. They were leaving Virginia Beach. I always remember that sign because that sign says West Virginia Beach. And Elijah Wood comes in a little motorcycle and he finds the girl and she takes the little baby off, hand it to her daughter and go, go, go. And they kiss and then, that's all you saw. But, I was sad to see her, die in this episode when I rewatched it. Obviously, they really liked her herself because she was in quite a few episodes later on. You know, what was it? When they went back in time, that two-parter episode. I love that episode.
And that spins off into the game Star Trek Online, because at the 50th anniversary of Star Trek in New York, that's where she was, and she was signing for her character, who they brought into the game, which was nice. You know what I mean? I just thought that, oh my God, I can't believe she was in the Flash. But yeah, so 88. So it was Greasy Lake, Miracle. She had a nice little Arizona Heat, Miracle Mile, Greasy Lake. Then she went to Deep Skin, and then she hit
Maybe that's what I'm
Pet
thinking.
Cemetery, which is the one that I remember the most. I don't remember any of these, but I remember Pet Cemetery with that little creepy baby.
I thought she had an okay career. I always sometimes wonder if she thought it was a mistake to leave Star Trek because her career. She was fatigued and kind of known as a sex symbol a little bit, but I never really thought of her as a major movie star. So I guess I would say she did all right. But I do feel like she was lucky enough to constantly get invited back to go to conventions,
Yeah.
considering that she left, the first season of Star Trek. So she definitely is lucky that they kind of offer her back with open arms.
Yeah. I'm, that's kind of, a big deal. You know what I mean? Like you said, to be able to come back to a series because, that was not really a happy set.
Mm-hmm.
From everything that I have on audiobook the 50 years of Star Trek. And some of the stuff that I learned, that was the reason I watched that episode. God, Mark. You know, it was just not a happy set. You know, the men were unfortunately, I don't even know how to say this. I don't want to say the men were men, you know what I mean? Because that just kind of seems like it's an excuse. But the men were very
well, you got to look at the time, though. You know,
yeah.
we're just, women being on a show like that was just kind of really still, you know, we're kind of started to do our own thing. I mean, yeah, we were in other shows back then, but this was a major show that it was more than just like Michelle Nichols was when the original Star Trek came out. She was there. She has a couple of parts where that she was kind of front stage, but nothing like the women of Next Gen when that came about. You know, they had really quite a few episodes that just surround Troy and just surround, you know, Tasha before she died and Crusher. So it's kind of sad that she decided that she wanted to leave.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just, you know, at the same time too, because you know, this was the time that we got the whole. It wasn't just
The three.
and for those of you guys who think that Star Trek the TOS was about Scotty and Chekhov, no, it was not. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, the ship. That was your main cast. Everybody else was a supporting cast member. I don't care what Mr. Sulu thinks he can say. No, I was not there to see Sulu. I was not there to see Scotty. As much as I loved looking at Uhura, I wanted to see Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You know what I mean? Everybody else was filler character stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this time with Next Gen, everybody shared that responsibility of the show, that weight of the show. And like you said, it was just sad that we had to have this whole thing where, again, 50th anniversary, 50 years of Star Trek. It's an audiobook. For those of you who do not like to read, it gets deep. It's some hurtful stuff. You know, because I always thought, you know, because I see them on TV, oh, they're the best in the movies. They're the best of friends. No. No. I mean, it was even hard to find out that, you know, William Shatner was not going to make Leonard Nimoy's funeral. You remember that? And then some pilot was like, hey, I'll fly you there for free. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? The Next Generation cast, on the other hand, hey, I'm in town. Well, come on over. Let's cook out. They get together every time that they're in town. They all get together. They all share. You know what I mean? And it's just wild to think that, you know, I guess art does not imitate life when it comes to that, because it's an art form and it's make believe. And unfortunately, sure enough, it was. But again, you're wrong. I watched this thing. There you go, my boy Simon. But it was just so disheartening to see that, you know, that character go out the way she did. I love the thing that she did for Data, though, because, you know, her and Data.
Yeah.
That to me was, you know, like, okay. All right. Later, there's an episode where they talk about it. What remember they put Data on trial for, is he human? Is he sentient?
Yeah.
And they ask him about this Mimikyu. Why do you keep it? Because it is, you know, it's special to me. Why is it special to me? She and I were involved. What do you mean involved? You know, and you know, he kind of tells that they were sexually involved.
Well, even in First Contact, when the Borg Queen was asking him about, you know, physical contact, he didn't say, Tasha's name, but he said the year, the time, the month.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. He counted that down, didn't he? Just like a dude. Just hey, it's been so da 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 da. But it was one of those episodes that I felt that was kind of like, okay, solid, but I just wish I could have sat down and been like, oh damn, they actually killed off a main character. Is anyone safe? Because I mean, we see that in other cultures' TV, especially in the Japanese. You get so attached to one character, like that's my favorite character. 2 episodes later, they gut that character, and you're sitting there like,
I did that last night on Squid Games. We're watching season 3, and a character died. At least the episode that we watched last night, and I was like, I can't believe they did that.
Right? You need that. You need that excitement. I mean, no one wants to see their favorite character, but that's the reality of certain things. It happens. It comes to that thing where boom, it happens. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good episode. Again, I'm not too thrilled about the way they did everything because, like I said, we were in Starfleet International, and this is before internet. We were rabid about information, and they would give Starfleet like certain information packets about what's going on, so we knew about it, and we were all like, "What? I can't believe this." So it was just sad to see her go, but like you said, I was so happy when they brought her back. They brought her back for not only for the TV show, but they brought her back for most of the video games, Star Trek Armada, Star Trek Online. I'm pretty sure she's got some other Star Trek stuff that she did with it, but that was the main thing. And now
she would have went off with kind of in a different way, though. I remember thinking that then, even thought that the other day, maybe glory, for her just to get, shot and she goes down and that pretty much it. I mean, she.
Why that was, though. You know why that was. Because Rick Berman was pissed at her.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pissed at her, and that's how, that's how he dealt with it. Again, guys, if you get a chance, it's on Amazon. 50 Years of Star Trek, and they go from TOS all the way up to, I believe at the time, Discovery was just getting ready to come out. So check it out. It'll give you all the insides and outsides of the the dirt of it, and I mean, I could not believe half the stuff that I was hearing. The thing with Voyager, and I mean, it just gets wild. So overall, though, your thoughts on the episode before we go to the next?
I think I would give it a 3. Just because how she died, and even Troy talking to the creature, I thought that was just a just a little lame, a little bit. But overall, it wasn't a bad episode. Because she died in it, I would probably watch it again, but it's not one of my favorite episodes.
I thought it was a good episode. The only thing I didn't like, and the thing with Troy, I
said it.
all in there and no, I like the mature Troy now because she's a lot more feistier than that demure, let me put you in this little skin tight shirt or this little skin tight bodysuit and have you walk around and, 7 of 9-ish type stuff.
Yeah.
But again, if you guys love your Trek, you this is a Tasha dies, so it's one of those episodes you really should watch.
Yeah.
Next up, we will always have Paris. Take the lead for this one, Admiral.
Well, this one, let's see. I think they go down, get a distress call, I believe, and Picard old kind of girlfriend is, there. You saw Crusher kind of made, oh, you know her? Yeah, I do. So I thought that was interesting. For me, I was a little bored with this episode. While I'm watching the episodes, I usually, write some notes, just because I haven't seen in a while, and I just want to make sure my thoughts were together. And, even though most of these episodes are usually about 43 minutes, when the commercial, because I'm watching it on Paramount Plus, when the little, 2-minute commercial come on, I'll jot my little notes. For this one, is only half of the sheet of paper, because, there she go. I was just, I don't know. I was a little bored with it because, like, my last sentence that I have up here is they fixed the issue. Captain was able to say goodbye to his old flame. That's just pretty much how I ended it. Because I was kind of bored with this episode. Now, the time warp thing, I thought it was kind of cool, but
this was an honor for me. Other than the nostalgia factor that we go through, and then, like you said, the time thing, and because I always thought that, I love the fact that the captain stayed, he kind of pushed everyone at arm's length and stayed away. And then, so we had this little bit of a mystery about him. And then, of course, at the end of the series, he finally sits down and plays cards with him. Oh, I should have done this a long time ago. Well, after your crew saved you from the Borg and did all that stuff, you should have had them in you should have been like Pike cooking them breakfast in your, you know what I mean? Come on in, Lieutenant. You know what I mean? It shouldn't have took it shouldn't have took all that to, sit down there, because they were your family, they were your friends. And but again, like you said, this was an honor for me. I kind of, and then of course, she has the boyfriend, and then and now the.
But see, this scene is kind of odd, though. If you really, considering what you just said, he kind of kept them, at length. And for this episode to kind of start with him fixing, it's just odd seeing him wanting to do that. Where I kind of feel like with the other series, the relationship that the captain has with the other crewmen developed much faster. You know, Picard always kept everybody at length, maybe to the point where, I mentioned Pike, was too close to his crew. I really do think Picard was maybe just had it too further up. I mean, considering what you said, everything they've done, I mean, everybody pretty much respected this man, except for, Engineer Lynch in the episode before this, and for him to just, you go over there, I don't need to be around Wesley, and I care, but do I really care? Where I kind of feel like the other captains kind of 100% does. And he didn't do a good job showing his feelings until later on in the series.
No, totally agree. Because for me, the thing that really kind of ground me in for this was it was like the Data and Wesley show. And I just, so anytime that the Klingons got into it, I was like, ooh, okay, you gave me a great episode. And then we're right back to it's either Data or it's Wesley. And then finally Wesley left. And I'm like, okay, cool. You give me one story here about Geordi. Then we're gonna do this little thing with Diana, Diana and Riker, and then Deanna, and Riker, and then all of a sudden Worf and Deanna, and I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting. I don't think she would go for that violent Klingon sex stuff. You know what I mean? I think it'd be like, no, you're too rough. Yeah, I think it would just be a little bit. Data seems to rule the movies.
And I was going to say that. I mean, I love the movies, the Next Gen, except for, Generations was all right. But, all the movies, when it comes to them, just surrounded by Data. And as they were doing more and more of these movies, I kind of developed that I didn't really care for Data, because in the beginning seasons of the show, it was kind of cool seeing Data trying to find his human side, not really human side. But now it's, the movies, hasn't Data already found that out yet? I kind of felt like they played that just a little bit too much from the movies, where I did not care for his character the last few movies, because it went back to what you were saying earlier about the original series, when it was just the three in Enterprise. And I kind of feel like the movies, it was Picard and Data and the Enterprise. The other characters, you barely saw them in the movies. And I liked all of the characters pretty much. Of course, some more than others. But I don't want to just do a show or just see a show surrounding Data playing with the boy, and Data dying, and Data.
Wait, he can come back because Data can come back because he's got B12 over there in the corner. We'll just put this chip in his head. And,
So I remember just going to the movies and seeing that, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sick of freaking Data, and I like Data, but as the show was progressing, the movies were progressing, can I see a little bit of backstory on, Geordi and, his life and, his relationship with, people. We know he has a kid, but let's see a little bit more, other than
that really would have been awesome to see Geordi and his daughters, right? Because he's got two daughters, right?
Yeah, two.
Yeah. And that was another thing too that, I get it, Worf had a son, Klingon, gotta have a boy.
Which you barely found out about, what happened to Alexandria later on. He just, left DS9 and that was it.
Well, a award for being a good father, Worf is not. You know what I mean? But I would have loved to seen Geordi with the challenges of two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're choosing that field of Starfleet. And he's like, hey, look, I don't know if I want y'all out there. Well, it's my life. I need to be out there.
Yeah.
Fathers and daughters are a different dynamic from fathers and sons, And being a father of a daughter, you sit there and you're like, I got to protect her. I got to keep her away from this. And then it's like, I got to let her go out there and do this, And then with your son, you kind of like going out there and do what you can do.
Yeah.
Get up and keep going. So I would have loved to see that dynamic because I loved seeing that in the last season of Picard with his daughters. I love that.
Yeah.
Crusher's done had two boys now. So, and then of course, Will Riker's wild little child that was just running around like I was like, does she need some Ritalin? What's wrong with your daughter? What's going on here? So I did like all that. Again, this was a sleeper episode for me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm giving it a 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of doing that because I'm revisiting it now. You know, because this was definitely one of those episodes where I was going, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah.
You know. So, all right, guys. 2 weeks, Tuesday, we shall be back unless something pops up. I'll be here in the. You know what? I think I'll be here in the Klingon shirt next week. If you got, I mean, in the next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? But I gotta sport my Federation pride here. I thoroughly enjoy, of course, what we're doing, and you know, if Commander Bishop would like to come back, I think we can accommodate him. No, I'm pretty sure he had a good reason. I'm pretty sure. But we will be back in 2 weeks, guys.
We normally are, so you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He was ready yesterday, so I have to give him that. We will be back, and hopefully I'll have some more information for you. And remember to remind me, Admiral, when I see you, why is their name Commander? Marky Mark, he screwed up.
Oh, he did.
Mm-hmm.
He did. Superman, we will have premiere at that time.
Okay, well then, you want to come back in 3 weeks?
No, 2 weeks is fine. He don't know what he's talking about. I got those tickets. You know, we're going to see the 10th.
Yeah, that's the 15th, Marky Mark.
Yeah, we're fine. I mean, I'm wearing my Jurassic Park because we're going to see.
I saw.
So I'm getting ready to see my dinosaurs tomorrow at 6:10.
I was seeing some of the stuff they had for that, and I was like, you know, that would be a good time for a Jurassic Park marathon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, buddy. Yep.
So I'm down for that. I gotta cue that up and get myself psyched up, because there are certain movies that I love to do, and I was surprised that I did a Harry Potter marathon one weekend.
Oh.
And I think the following weekend, Jinky wanted to do what is that? What's that vampire werewolf movie?
Vampire werewolf. That's Twilight.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. She,
no.
I pulled a bark on that one. I'm like, you're on your own. I'm not.
Oh.
I had to watch. We had to do a show on that, so I had to go through that. And my daughter's telling me, "Well, you don't understand. You know, I read the books," and she's telling me, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's
Mark
the
read the book
thing
too.
I've ever heard."
No, I'm not. No.
Yeah.
I saw them once. I never would get that part of my life back ever again.
I know. Was it Friday the 13th? Was that? Yeah, Friday the 13th marathon ain't bad either, man. But guys, we'll be back on the 15th, barring anything happening. And you might notice I start transitioning more and more and I might put on the makeup and the headgear, and might, I will not. No, not the Matrix. I can't. Especially that last one. That last one just.
Oh, that was such a waste. They waited too long for that one. The plot.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
But guys, from us to you, live long and prosper. And of course, Kapla.